Hi there, my name is Memo. This is my channel, Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion, which you might be able to see around me. It's tropical houseplants. Now today's video is going to be a bit different. I filmed different sections of the video which were a bit more close up because it's going to be quite tricky for me to show you in this way. But today I want to go through what I did to A, pollinate, and B, take the seeds from my Anthurium crystallinum seed propagation. So before I go into the next few clips, which are all about how I collected the seeds, let me talk a bit more about how I pollinate. I'm not entirely sure because I filmed a couple of days ago whether or not I talked about how to pollinate. I think I might have done, so hopefully you should see now the videos, and I'll probably wrap up at the end as well in terms of my experiences. Here you can see an inflorescence from another Anthurium. This is the Anthurium vitarifolium, and this is at the stage when it first comes out. This is probably what most people are familiar with seeing, but what you would get is before the male part essentially emerges, which would be all that yellow pollen that you get on the entirety of the Anthurium, you'll get the female stage where you can see that the inflorescence, this one doesn't unfortunately have it at the moment, gets a slightly sticky, clear liquid on the outside. That means that that inflorescence is then receptive to take on the male pollen essentially. So the way that you would normally pollinate is, unfortunately, you get the female before you get the male because dumb luck that way. But what you would do is if you have an inflorescence that has gone over to the male stage and has created a whole bunch of pollen, what you do is you take a little brush, you brush it all off, you put it in a little baggie. I find the resealable baggies work perfectly well with this. You keep the pollen in there, obviously mark up what it is, especially if you've got different Anthuriums and you want to create the same Anthurium, or if you want to hybridize between two different types of Anthurium, pop that in the freezer, and then the next time you have an inflorescence and you get that first stage, which is the female stage with the sticky liquid on the outside, take that pollen out of the freezer, and then again using a brush, just brush it along all of the inflorescence on the sticky liquid, and essentially you can do this as much as you want, and then essentially it's a waiting game. At that point you then need to wait. It's probably going to be quite a few weeks before you start seeing if it has actually worked. At that stage you'll also get the inflorescence starting to swell up, and let me see if I can give you some examples of different stages of that. So here you might be able to see that this inflorescence hasn't fully swollen up because obviously some of the pollen didn't take to this section down here. But if you look at the top section here, you might be able to distinguish there's a tiny bit of swelling that's happening there. That's where the berries essentially are going to come out of. And let me show you one more example when it's a bit further down that stage. So this is another vitarifolium inflorescence. The next one that I'll show you is another crystallinum inflorescence. So here you should be able to see an inflorescence from an Anthurium crystallinum, and you can see that it's starting to swell up in a slightly different way than the previous one we were looking at, but you might be able to see that there is some darker areas, and you can see this one has been pollinated quite nicely across the whole thing, and you might be able to see some of those darker areas that are picking out there. Those will eventually turn into the berries and then ripen off essentially. So as you might be able to see here, and let me just point to a few things, so you might be able to see these are the little berries that are happening on the Anthurium inflorescence, and you can see generally what people say is you'll wait for them to pop out, and you can see it clearly for some of these ones here that they've popped out of that main inflorescent mass there, and they've obviously colored up quite nicely because when they originally pop out, and it's a shame I didn't take a video of that, they're all kind of green, and it takes them a few days to kind of go a slightly darker color. I've probably left this on here a bit longer than I probably would normally do, but I wanted to film this video. And yeah, that's kind of when you know that they are ready to go. In terms of removing the berries, I'll try to do this as best as I can, but the camera is at a really awkward angle. It's zoomed in, it might focus on different things, but all you need to do is run your hand along the inflorescence and essentially just kind of gently tease the small berries off the actual inflorescence. So if you have a look, the way that you would do that is, let me just bring that in a bit closer so you might be able to see. So if I just go and move my thumb and I just literally just roll it over, you can see that you can slowly start pulling off the inflorescences. It is that easy for them to come off. And I'll see if I can bring that in a bit closer so you might be able to see. That's what the inflorescences berries will look like when they've been picked. Let me pick off the rest of the berries now, and then I will scoot you in a bit closer to see what you need to do at the next stage. After some of the berries have been picked off, not all the berries because they don't all mature at the same time, I've put them in a little container. You can see it's an old packet of lower pack butter, but essentially at this stage what you want to do, and just to give you an indication, that's kind of like struggle to count most of those, but I think it's between 70 and 75, and each one of the berries can have either 1 or 2 seeds. So if you consider that maybe each one of the berries has got 2 seeds and there's 70, that's 140 seeds, and if every single one of them takes, that's 140 seedlings of a Crystallinum. That's not counting the other just over 110 berries that I've already harvested off that same plant with roughly 2 seeds per berry. I've got a lot of seedlings starting at the moment in my propagation box, and I will show a video or maybe even a photo of what that looks like. But essentially what you would do at this stage is take each one of the berries, put them into water. So if I just show you really quickly here, and I pop these into the water, what you would then do whilst they're in the water, actually, because they've got a little pulp essentially, so kind of like not slimy, but it's just a bit of a clear gel around the berries and between the outside of the fruit essentially, or the berry, and the seed. And let me see if I can just move the camera slightly down. There we go. And what you want to do whilst it's in the water, if you take each one of these berries and just squeeze it gently in between your hands, what you'll then see is that you'll get a seed or 2 seeds from each one. Let me see if I can find one that might have 2 seeds. And you might be able to see, I think this one might actually have, no, most of these seem to have the 1 seed instead of 2. It's a shame because most of the ones that I did the other week had 2 seeds. Let me see if this one does. No, just the 1. But again, it just depends on the fruit, and essentially what you want to do is you want to squeeze all of these out, and let me do that. Probably no point of me showing you what that exactly looks like because it's just going to be me squeezing berries in the water. And then what you want to do is take those berries out, maybe swish them around, take all the pulp out, swish them around in the water just to get as much of that pulp off as possible. Now, there's a lot of people that say that you should leave them in water to dissolve the pulp completely because otherwise it won't take. Some people are saying it doesn't make any difference. I've tried most of the previous berries that I took out from the plants, and I kind of did this. I didn't let them sit in to take off any of the pulp, but I did swish it around, and it worked fine. It worked completely fine. So let me just do that now, and I will come back briefly. So after all of the seed pulp has been removed, you can see what it looks like in the water, and as I said, you just want to give it a quick swish around whilst I don't dump water out all over the table, or you can just use your hand and just stir it up. Sorry about all the unfocusedness of it all, my camera is having a bit of a moment, but you can then see that all the seeds are there in the middle. It can give you an indication. I wanted to show you a seed that might not be particularly great, and hopefully that's going to get picked up with the camera. There's a bit of a black mark on there, so I've decided not to use this. And just to give you an indication, this is all the pulp that came off the seeds. Now, let me show you the next step. And the next step is actually getting a bowl or some form of container with dampened sphagnum moss. And then you want to take out the seeds after they've been rinsed and the water's been removed, and place them into the sphagnum moss, just on top of the sphagnum moss. Normally you'd want to leave as much space as possible, but I don't have an awful lot of space anymore in my propagation tank, so I might kind of crowd them up a bit more, and basically after that we'll just pop them into the propagation tank. So let me just lay them all out. As I said, they're probably going to be a bit closer than you probably should. If you can, you've got space them out a bit more, because then you don't have to move them away from each other when they start sprouting, but I don't have the luxury of space right now. As I mentioned, you probably would want to definitely space them out more than I have, but you can see I can just pop them on top there. And then what you want to do, just to be on the safe side, just do a couple of spritz of water just to keep it moist, and then pop that into the propagation tank. Remember, if you can, every day to crack the lid of the propagation tank for a few minutes, spray the sphagnum moss down again so you can re-dampen it, close the lid, and essentially that's it. And after that, it's a bit of a waiting game. Okay, hopefully you've all enjoyed that, and hopefully I will have many Anthurium crystallinums, probably too many to know what to do with, but there might be a few seedlings or even some seeds just get gifted over to some friends and just go, here you go, this is your baby now, take care of it, thank you. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed. If you've got any questions, comments, do ask them down below. I hesitate to say that on this video because this is the first time I'm doing it, so I'm kind of going off what I've seen other people do. I've not had an entire, not even one full growing experience with this, but this is what I've done based on what I have seen other people do. Hopefully this will also help you as well. And yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about today. And hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.